30 seconds. That's all it took for Sophie Cunningham to flip the entire WNBA narrative on its head. One moment. It looked like just another physical game. Another hard foul. Another heated exchange, and then she grabbed her. Dragged her to the floor. No hesitation, no second thought. And just like that, everything changed. Because that wasn't just a reaction. That was a message. And the league felt it instantly. Social media exploded. Millions of views in hours. Fans calling her reckless. Others calling her a hero. But behind all the chaos, one question started spreading faster than the clip itself. What does she know? Because players don't react like that. Unless something has been building. And that's when Sophie Cunningham did something nobody expected. She spoke, not carefully, not politically, but honestly, and what she revealed. It wasn't just about that moment. It was about Caitlin Clark, about what really happens when the cameras turn off, about locker rooms. About conversations fans were never supposed to hear. Because, according to Sophie, what people think they know about playing with Caitlin Clark is completely wrong. And the deeper she went, the more uncomfortable it got. Because this isn't just a story about teammates. This is about what the league didn't want exposed. And now that it's out, there's no taking it back. Because if what she's saying is true, then everything we thought about this rivalry, about this league, about Caitlin Clark herself, might be completely upside down. And this is just the beginning. Long before that moment went viral. Before the headlines, the debates, and the chaos. Sophie Cunningham was never supposed to be part of this story. She wasn't the face of the league. She wasn't the headline name. She was the type of player who built everything the hard way. 6 seasons grinding in Phoenix. Earning respect through toughness, consistency, and a mentality that didn't back down from anyone. No spotlight handed to her. No hype machine protecting her. Just work, pressure, and survival in a league that doesn't forgive weakness. And then, everything changed. A massive trade, not a simple move. A league-shaking, multi-team deal that dropped her straight into the most intense spotlight in women's basketball. Indiana, Caitlin Clark's team, the center of attention. The most watched, most criticized, most dissected environment the WNBA had ever seen. And suddenly, Sophie Cunningham wasn't just another player anymore. She was inside the storm because Caitlin Clark isn't just a teammate. She's a phenomenon. Every move she makes is analyzed. Every game becomes a headline. Every mistake becomes a debate. And every player around her, they feel it, the pressure, the noise, the expectations. And for someone like Sophie, who built her career on toughness and loyalty, that environment hits differently. Because now it's not just about basketball, it's about protecting something, or someone. But those first weeks, they didn't look like success. They looked like struggle. Injuries hit immediately. Ankle issues, missed time. Chemistry that didn't click. A new system that didn't feel natural. And questions started creeping in fast. Was this trade a mistake? Does she even fit here? Can she handle this level of pressure? And for a moment, it looked like the answer might be no. Because when you step into a situation this intense, you either rise or you get swallowed. But then, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but internally. Sophie got her chance. A starting role, real minutes, real responsibility. And that's when everything changed. Because she didn't just adjust, she exploded. Efficiency through the roof. Confidence rising. Impact becoming undeniable. But more importantly, her role became clear. She wasn't just there to score. She wasn't just there to fit in. She was there to enforce, to protect, to bring an edge that this team didn't have before. And that edge? It came with emotion, because playing alongside Caitlin Clark isn't neutral. You feel the way she's treated. You see the contact. You hear the crowd. You notice the patterns, the hits that go a little harder, the moments that feel a little too intentional, the energy that doesn't match normal competition. And over time, that builds not just in the player being targeted, but in the players around her, because loyalty in a locker room, it's not just words, it's reactions. And Sophie Cunningham, she was watching everything, every possession, every hit, every moment, where things crossed a line that nobody was saying out loud, and deep down, something was building, not frustration, not anger, something more controlled, more dangerous. Because when a player like Sophie sees something she doesn't agree with, she doesn't tweet about it, she doesn't complain about it. She waits, and when the moment comes, she responds. And when that moment finally arrived, it didn't just change a game, it exposed everything. It didn't look like a breaking point at first, just another physical game, another hard-fought matchup where bodies hit the floor and tempers quietly simmer under the surface. The kind of game the WNBA prides itself on: tough, competitive, relentless. But this one felt different. Because, from the opening minutes, something was off. The contact wasn't just physical, it was targeted. Subtle at first bumps off ball, hands lingering a second to long defensive pressure that felt less like strategy and more like a message. And at the center of it all, Caitlin Clark again, because by this point, it wasn't a secret anymore. Around the league, there had been whispers, conversations, unspoken understanding that when Clark stepped on the floor, the intensity went up not just because of her talent, but because of what she represented: attention, spotlight, change, and not everyone was comfortable with that. So possession after possession, the pressure built, then it happened. A moment that looked small, but meant everything. Clark takes contact, direct, sharp, enough to disrupt her completely. No whistle that changes the tone, no reaction that calms things down, just another play. Unless you were paying attention, because Sophie Cunningham was. And in that moment, something snapped. Not out of control, not reckless, but intentional. The next time the opportunity came, she didn't hesitate. She grabbed, pulled, dropped her opponent straight to the floor. In front of everyone watching, no confusion, no apology, just action. And instantly, the arena changed. Gasps, players rushing in, officials stepping between bodies, and Sophie walking away like she already knew exactly what she had. Done. Ejection. Immediate, no debate. But the real explosion didn't happen on the court, it happened seconds later online, because the clip spread like wildfire. Millions of views, replays from every angle, slow motion breakdowns, debates igniting across every platform. Dirty play, overreaction, completely unnecessary, but just as loud. Another voice started rising. She was protecting her teammate. She saw something we didn't. That wasn't random. And that's where the first shocking twist hits. Because when Sophie Cunningham finally spoke about it, she didn't deny it. She didn't soften it. She didn't even pretend it was accidental. I'm going to protect my teammates. Simple, direct, unapologetic. And that sentence, it changed everything, because now the moment had context. Now it wasn't just aggression, it was intention. And intention raises questions. What exactly was she protecting? What had she seen? What had been happening that pushed her to that point? Because players don't risk ejection, fines, reputation, unless something deeper is going on. And that's when Sophie dropped something even bigger, not in that moment, not in that game, but later, in a space where she didn't have to filter anything. She revealed something that had been hidden in plain sight. Locker rooms. Conversations. A mindset that had been building long before she ever joined Indiana. Players talking about Caitlin Clark. Planning, targeting, not just competing, sending messages, testing limits, showing her what the league really is. And suddenly, that moment on the court looked completely different, because now it wasn't just one play. It wasn't just one reaction. It was part of something bigger, something uncomfortable, something the league had never openly admitted. That maybe, just maybe, Caitlin Clark wasn't just facing competition. She was facing something closer to resistance. And Sophie Cunningham, she had seen it from both sides. Before Indiana, after Indiana, inside the rooms, on the court, and when she finally said it out loud. It didn't just validate the moment, it exposed the system. Because if players were actually targeting Clark, if this wasn't random, if this was intentional, then the entire narrative shifts from rivalry to something far more complicated and far more dangerous. Because now the question isn't just about what happened in that game. It's about how long it's been happening and who else knew. And once that door opens, you don't get to close it again, because now everyone is watching differently, and the next moment like that won't be ignored. It will be questioned, analyzed, and possibly exploded into something even bigger. The moment Sophie spoke, the league didn't calm down. It fractured because what she revealed didn't just confirm suspicions. It validated a narrative that had been quietly building for months. And once that narrative had a voice, it couldn't be contained anymore. Now every clip looked different. Every hard foul wasn't just physical, it was intentional. Every defensive scheme wasn't just strategy, it was personal. And Caitlin Clark, she wasn't just a rookie anymore, she was a target. Social media exploded into full-blown chaos. Old footage resurfaced overnight. Fans started stitching together moments from across the season, hits, bumps, no calls. Reactions building a timeline that felt too consistent to ignore. This isn't random. This has been happening all year. They've been testing her. The conversation shifted from debate to investigation, and inside the league, silence, no official denial, no strong pushback, just carefully worded responses that avoided the real question, because acknowledging it would change everything. Meanwhile, Sophie Cunningham wasn't backing down. If anything, she leaned in harder. Her podcast clips started circulating like wildfire. Every statement dissected. Every sentence turned into a headline. And then she said it, clear, blunt, unfiltered. Double quotes, "If you don't think Caitlin Clark is the face of the league right now, you're just wrong." That line hit like a bomb. Because now this wasn't just about physical play anymore. This was about power, about identity, about who the league belongs to. And that's when the second major twist detonated. The backlash didn't come from fans. It came from inside, players, analysts, voices connected to the league. Subtle at first comments, reactions, tone shifts, then louder. This is bigger than one player. Respect the veterans. The league was built before her. What looked like support for balance felt like resistance, and suddenly, Sophie wasn't just defending a teammate. She was stepping into a war. A divide that had been quietly growing. Beneath the surface, old guard versus new era, established names versus rising spotlight, control versus change. Because Caitlin Clark wasn't just bringing attention, She was shifting power, and not everyone was ready for that shift. Inside locker rooms across the league, the energy changed. Players started noticing how narratives were forming, how certain voices were amplified, how others were ignored. And in Indiana, the pressure doubled because now every game wasn't just about winning. It was about proving something, proving the attention was deserved, proving the criticism was wrong, proving that this wasn't hype. It was reality, but the tension didn't stop on the court. It followed them. Everywhere, press conferences, social media, even behind closed doors. Because once a league starts questioning itself, there's no neutral ground. You either pick a side or you get pulled into one. And Sophie Cunningham, she had already made her choice. But then, everything took another turn, because just when it felt like the story couldn't get more intense, it did. The spotlight shifted again, but this time, it wasn't about conflict. It was about contrast. A clip surfaced, not from a game, not from a fight, from a charity event. Sophie Cunningham, no contract, no obligation, serving food, talking to families, completely away from the chaos. No cameras, chasing drama, no headlines waiting to explode. Just presence, human, real, and the internet reacted instantly because it didn't match the narrative people had built. The enforcer, the aggressor, the one who dragged someone to the floor on national television, now standing quietly, giving back, saying, "This is what we're here for." And suddenly, the story got complicated because now people weren't just seeing a moment. They were seeing a person. And that shift, it hit just as hard as anything else, because it forced a new question. Was Sophie Cunningham the problem, or the one willing to say what others wouldn't? And if she was right about what was happening inside the league, then how much of the story have we been getting wrong? Because now the narrative isn't stable anymore. It's splitting. Two sides, two interpretations, two completely different versions of the same reality. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Caitlin Clark is still playing, still getting hit, still carrying the spotlight. But now, with the entire league watching not just what happens, but why it happens, and that kind of attention doesn't fade. It builds until something finally breaks by the next morning. It wasn't just a sports story anymore. It was a full-blown cultural split. Every platform, ESPN panels, podcasts, TikTok breakdowns, Twitter threads was locked into one question that nobody could answer cleanly. What is really happening inside the WNBA? And the divide, it got ugly fast. One side rallied behind Sophie Cunningham like she had just exposed a truth nobody else had the courage to say. They called her real, loyal, the only one willing to protect her teammate when the league stayed quiet. She said what everyone was thinking. She saw it from the inside. That wasn't a hot take. That was a confession. But the other side, they weren't just disagreeing. They were pushing back hard. This is exaggeration. This is how basketball has always been played. You're turning competition into controversy. And right in the middle of it all, Caitlin Clark not responding, not reacting, just playing, which somehow made everything louder, because silence at that level, it doesn't calm the storm, it amplifies it. Every hit she took after that got replayed 10 times, every no call turned into evidence, every defensive possession analyzed like it meant something more. And then came the league, careful, calculated, controlled statements that said just enough to acknowledge the noise, but not enough to confirm anything. We support competitive play. We value player safety, standard language, safe language, but to fans, it sounded like avoidance, because the one thing nobody addressed directly was Sophie's claim. Were players actually targeting Caitlin Clark? No answer, just silence, wrapped in professionalism. And that silence started to feel intentional. Meanwhile, players across the league were feeling it too, not just the stars, everyone, because now every action came with pressure. Every foul risked becoming a headline. Every interaction could be clipped, posted, dissected, and inside locker rooms. The conversations got tense because nobody wanted to be the next moment that went viral. But nobody wanted to look soft either. It created a psychological trap. Play too hard, you're targeting. Play too soft, you're exposed. And that pressure, it doesn't just stay on the court. It follows you into interviews, into social media, into your own head. And for Sophie Cunningham, the attention didn't slow down. It multiplied. Her follower count exploded. Her podcast numbers surged. Every word she said became content. But with that attention came scrutiny. People digging through old clips, old games, old statements, trying to find inconsistencies, trying to discredit her. Because when someone disrupts a narrative, the system doesn't stay quiet. It reacts. And then another shift, fans started turning their focus toward something even deeper. Not just how players were treating Clark, but how the league itself was handling her rise. Marketing coverage, protection, or lack of it, because now the question wasn't just about players anymore. It was about power. Who controls the narrative? Who benefits from the spotlight? And who feels threatened by it? Names started getting pulled into the conversation. Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, Paige Buchers waiting in the wings as the next wave. Even Kathy Engelbert. Because leadership always gets questioned when chaos rises, and suddenly, this wasn't just about one incident. It wasn't just about Sophie. It wasn't even just about Caitlin Clark. It was about the future of the league itself. Because what happens when your biggest star also becomes your biggest controversy? Do you protect her? Do you balance it? Or do you let the tension play out and risk everything? And right now, it felt like nobody had control, because the story wasn't slowing down. It was evolving. And just when it seemed like the narrative had reached its peak, something unexpected happened. Something quieter, but far more revealing. Because behind the chaos, behind the debates, behind the viral moments, the truth about Caitlin Clark herself was about to change everything people thought they knew. And once that truth got out, it didn't calm the storm. It made it even more dangerous. Just when the noise felt uncontrollable, the narrative flipped. Not because of a game, not because of a foul, but because of something far more. Unexpected, Sophie Cunningham started talking about Caitlin Clark off the court, and what she said didn't match anything people thought they knew. Not the superstar image, not the untouchable face of the league, not the polished, media-trained icon everyone had built in their heads. She called her something else, a big old dork. And that one phrase, it hit harder than any viral clip because it shattered the illusion. Suddenly, the player at the center of all this tension, all this targeting, all this controversy, wasn't some distant, larger-than-life figure. She was human, goofy, low-key, obsessed with basketball in a way that felt almost innocent compared to the chaos surrounding her. And that contrast, it changed everything, because now people weren't just asking, is she being targeted? They were asking, why her? Why does a player like that, focused, quiet, non-confrontational, end up at the center of so much tension? And that question doesn't have a comfortable answer, because the deeper people looked, the more complicated it became. Clark isn't loud. She doesn't call players out. She doesn't fuel drama publicly. And yet, she's the one everyone reacts to. The one defense is key. On the one conversations orbit around. The One presence that changes the temperature of every game she plays in. And that's when the real twist hits. Maybe this was never about personality. Maybe it was never about disrespect. Maybe it was about impact, because impact creates pressure. Pressure creates insecurity, and insecurity creates reactions people don't always understand or admit. Sophie saw that dot from inside, from both sides. Before Indiana and after, she saw how Clark was talked about, how she was approached, how differently she was treated compared to other players. And when she said, "It's too much," that wasn't exaggeration, that was perspective. But here's where it gets even more unsettling. Because while all this was happening, while the league debated, divided, and spiraled into chaos, something else was quietly shifting. Sophie Cunningham herself was becoming something bigger. Her name started climbing. Search rankings, media mentions, fan engagement at one point. She was one of the most searched athletes in the entire country, higher than players people assumed would always dominate that space, including Clark and Ez when she was asked about it. She didn't celebrate, she didn't flex. She immediately redirected the conversation back to Clark, back to her teammate, back to context, and that reaction revealed something most people missed. Because in a moment where she could have taken the spotlight, she gave it away, which raises a dangerous possibility. What if Sophie Cunningham isn't just part of the story, but a key to understanding it? What if her perspective raw, unfiltered, inside the systems, showing us something the league hasn't fully acknowledged yet? Because now the situation feels different. Not resolved, not clarified, just exposed and heading into the next season. Everything is lined up perfectly. Caitlin Clark, healthy, dominant. Coming off international success. Indiana, fever stronger, deeper, more dangerous than ever. And Sophie Cunningham, waiting. Free agency decisions looming. Fans demanding her return. Clark, reportedly pushing for it behind the scenes, and the league watching, because if she comes back, this story doesn't end. It escalates, because now you don't just have a superstar. You have a protector, a voice, a player willing to say what others won't. And if what she said is even partially true, then the next season isn't just basketball. It's a test of players, of the league itself. Because the next time something too much happens, it won't be ignored, it won't be dismissed, and it definitely won't stay quiet. And the real question is, when that moment comes, again, who's going to speak up? And who's going to pretend they didn't see it? Now it's your turn. You've seen the moments. You've heard what Sophie Cunningham said, no filters. No safe answers, just raw truth from inside the locker room. You've watched the clips, the hits, the reactions, the silence from the league, and the chaos that followed. So what do you actually believe? Is Caitlin Clark really being targeted? Or is this just the pressure that comes with being the biggest name in the sport? Did Sophie Cunningham expose something real? Or did she just pour gasoline on a fire that was already out of control? And more importantly, if players inside the league are finally starting to speak up, what else hasn't been said yet? Drop your real opinion in the comments. No safe takes. No fence sitting. Because this story isn't slowing down, it's building. And if Sophie comes back next season, if Clark keeps dominating, if the tension keeps rising, then the next moment won't just go viral. It might force the entire league to respond. Make sure you like, subscribe, and stay locked in, because what's coming next in this story, nobody's ready for it.